Welcome to the Apostolic Forum. I'm Dana Thompson, and today we have a very exciting subject for you. We're going to continue along our line of aligning ourselves with the prophetic for this new season, part 2, but especially we're going to talk about the subject of warfare and how we can have tools to use in this new season that God approves of. And here to discuss this topic with me are 3 of my wonderful family members. I have Brian Alexander. Good to have you back again, Brian.
Great to be here.
Thank you so much for making a loop around and coming back to see us again.
Absolutely.
And also Aileen, so good to see you once again.
Thank you.
You guys look like you got a little bit rest, so I'm really happy about that. Just a little bit
good.
there. And also John Metcalf, the man who, by which from 3 years ago, who originated and started this forum with me. So thank you, John, and welcome back again.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have been discussing this new season and what God is doing in this new season, especially prophetically. But Brian and Aileen, I know that since you're our special guests all the way from Albuquerque, New Mexico, we're going to allow you to just open up and just give us a brief summary thus far of some things you feel like God said the last time you were on here versus where the Lord is leading you now, and we'll take it from there.
Sure. You know, one of the things that comes up when we're having discussions with various groups, they want to know what are some practical applications. Maybe they've received a prophetic word and they've read through it, but they want to know, okay, now what? What do I do with it? How do I implement it? And so part of what we would like to talk about are some just basic, very tangible strategies that are kind of weapons in the hands for warfare, because we are in a war, and it's real. And we don't want these things to just be nebulous concepts. We want them to be tangible. And so that's kind of the direction we've been taking through this last week. And we call it timely warfare because with each season comes new weapons. There's new revelation released onto the planet, new apostolic doctrine, new prophetic insight, and so let's pick up these things and make them actually strategic weapons in our hands. And I think the best example is the teaching about the spiritual father and sonship. One of the major entrenchments of the enemy since the fall. Adam's nature changed to that of someone fathered to an orphan. And that orphan culture has been perpetuated ever since.
Right.
This revelation about having a spiritual father and being sons of God is the only strategic weapon that can defeat this culture of the orphan.
Yes.
And so that's an example of something you can actually pick up, use to take back the territory and the strongholds established by the enemy.
Yes. And that's an organic model.
Right.
You know, it's very organic. When you talk about father, sons, you're talking about family.
Right.
You know, so we can relate to that. That's something we can relate to because, you know, it's the whole purposes of God why he put man in the earth and woman in the earth. And
Exactly.
to, you know, he said, be fruitful and multiply. So therefore, you know, he had some intentions of family there.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate you sharing that. Aileen, I saw you shaking your head the whole time. You had something you want to add to that?
Well, just that it's could probably be helpful for people to have sort of the scriptural references around the areas we're going to be speaking of. So one thing we're going to be talking about with the timely warfare is the domains in which we are meant to rule. And people can look to Ephesians chapter 5 and 6 for those domains. And then we're talking about stages of sonship, ruling in each stage of sonship. And you can look in 1 John chapter 1 for some of those references. There's others, but those are some good encapsulations. Then we're going to be talking about, as Brian said, seasons. And the seasons are one of our understandings that God puts us in a set time in the earth. Is in Acts 17, you can look at verse 26, and also from Psalm 16, verses 5 and 6, where it talks about, Lord, you are my portion, you've assigned me my cup, the boundary lines have fallen in pleasant places for me, you've made my lot secure, and surely I have a delightful inheritance. So we'll be, you know, using certain terminology, and then those are the scriptural references that'll assist people in kind of delving a little deeper.
Right.
So that's what I was shaking my head about.
Oh, great.
That was
great.
great.
That's a lot added there. John, did you have something you want to add to that?
No, this is great. I'm listening.
It's going to be exciting, huh?
Yeah.
All right. Well, you know, it's amazing that you would picked this topic, timely warfare, because I think that a lot of times when the prophetic comes forth, most of the time people don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
When a word from the Lord or a new season comes in, which usually is preceded by a word of the
Right.
Lord, most people don't know what to do with it. So being able to tangibly say through the scripture, all right, now that you have the revelation and God is showing you something about this new season, there's a process that's involved. Because I must admit, when I hear people say, well, how do I apply this? A lot of times, depending on the person, what I find out, especially when people have come out of work-related mentality,
Right.
when they have that work, the curse upon them, where they have to feel like they have to work,
Yes,
continue to work
right,
in order to
right.
get approval for God.
Right.
They're not secure in their identity as being sons. So I always wonder about when the Lord does reveal something, how important it is for us to allow the person to know, before we talk about manifestation, there has to be a transfiguration. There has to be a renewing of the mind. There has to be a process of the soul. And that can take time depending on where the Lord has that person in the season.
Yes.
So you'll introduce something to someone, and the first thing they want to know is, okay, what do I need to do? And a lot of times what I've found by the Lord is not so much of what they need to do, but how God is showing them who they need to become.
Yes.
Does that make sense to you guys?
Right.
It does,
Exactly.
absolutely. And again, it goes to the context we put it in is stages of sonship, knowing where they are at within their maturing process. And the only requirement in any given stage is to live up to the measure that you had attained. So in that, there is no condemnation if you didn't know what you didn't know. But if you're not living up to what you've already attained, you have the information, you have the revelation, and you're not walking in it, then that's a different story.
Okay.
But live up to the measure and then press on toward maturity. That's the context. And so the requirements on a toddler are not the same as a teenager or someone who's in their 20s and 30s.
Right.
And understanding that, I think, takes a lot of judgmentalism out of the body, that to identify people at stages of sonship, and makes it, like you said, more organic, a familial model, that when you gather at the table, there's the little babies, there's the toddlers, there's the teenagers, and it's a mixture of people at various stages of maturity. And if we can start to look at it in that context, it's not either you're fully obtained and mature or you're not living up.
Right.
It's a progress.
Right.
And I think that helps people. And it also helps people when you're speaking to them to be able to identify and discern where they're at and give them a measure that they can live up to.
Right.
And not set the goal so far out that they're just set for failure.
Yeah. And be comfortable where you're at.
Yeah.
One of the things I
Exactly.
think to this day when I think about the R&B artist Michael Jackson is how a lot of his child life was taken from him because he, was his father really pushed him to be a performer.
Right.
So therefore he didn't get to do things that regular children did. So
Right.
as time went on, I saw him trying to recapture those stages,
Right.
in his
Right.
life.
Right.
And I sort of saw that. And I think that same as that, that's sort of a natural situation, but I see how that can apply spiritually. If you don't embrace the season where the Lord has you, or the maturity level where the Lord has you, and learn your lessons in that particular,
Exactly.
that grace, I think that it can cause for some, what they call it with the family, dysfunctional,
Right.
some dysfunctionism somewhere along the line,
Absolutely.
So where did this topic of timely warfare come up? When is the first time the Lord sort of just gave you that word, timely warfare?
We spoke about it first in Roswell, New Mexico,
Okay.
at a brother, John Shaver's house, dear brother that I think you guys know. And again, it was something we wanted to give people tangible tools to fight the fight. And he laid out various strategies. Another tool that is so misunderstood is the true power that lies in water baptism. It is a tool for breaking generational, familial curses, as well as anything that might come from natural ancestry. And if people understood what a firm foundation they have in spiritual warfare, based on the fact that when they were water baptized, they were dead to their natural lineage and raised again as spirit being,